Good morning, afternoon. Welcome to the Greg Tompsett Football Show, where we are going to talk about everything but Buffalo Bills football. Today, we will be going around the league talking about the other games, what happened, what mattered to the Bills, what mattered to the playoff race, and how we can make fun of the Jets, which is always a great way to start any day. So without further ado, let's dive right in and check out what's going on. The first game was the Thursday night action. Real, a dud of a game. The Cowboys barely got by the Giants. This was a field goal fest. There was not a ton of excitement going on. And although the Cowboys did control this, they lost their two best pass rushers, both DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, for an indeterminate period of time. So we'll see what that ends up doing to their season and where it is. But these are two teams not particularly going anywhere. The main event for today was the 1:00 game between the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. The Jets were hosting the Broncos in New York, and this was at one point was about to set the record for offensive futility in modern history. They had the least combined yards up until a 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, which barely put them over the total record for yards in a half. Then there was a little bit, the rain subsided a little bit in the second half, and the Broncos got a little bit of a drive going. Bo Nix ended up 12 of 25 for 60 yards. That is not a misprint or me misannouncing it. He completed 12 passes for 60 yards, 5 yards per completion, just barely over 2 yards per attempt, and he won. This was just a ridiculous game. Rodgers and the Jets went back and forth, couldn't get protections right. He got rocked multiple times. Good for the Broncos. They were sending the house pretty often in this one, and were in position where they basically gave themselves a chance to win in a game that they played pretty terrible. In what looked like it was going to be the game clinching field goal, Will Lutz of the Broncos missed, and it seemed like it was going to give the Jets an easy out, and they were going to win 12-10. They got the ball. It was a 50-yard field goal, so they got the ball back at the Broncos 40. So the Jets were at the Jets' own 40-yard line. And so all they had to do was get maybe like 25, 30 yards and then kick a game-winning field goal. And the Jets did move the ball back a little bit, and then Zerline missed the field goal. So it was the perfect combination of terrible game. Then you gave Jets fans hope of being able to be like, all right, well, at least we're going to get out of here with a win. And then boom, right back with a devastating loss. So, as they say, misery loves company, and I loved watching this one. It was very, very enjoyable. In a game of just, I refuse to acknowledge, the Vikings were up 28-0. Like, I just don't understand how the Vikings are this dominant of a team. They're 4-0. They did let the Packers kind of come back with some garbage time stuff here and get back into it. So their second half obviously wasn't good, because you did give up multiple plays, and a lot of this was at the very, very end. So it wasn't, like an entire game worth. Most of it was in the last, Jaden Reed's touchdown was 15 seconds left in the third quarter. So it was, almost all their scoring was in the fourth quarter. I mean, so it wasn't like a back and forth kind of thing, but still, the Vikings are 4-0 and they were up 28-0. I can't quite get my head around how this team is playing the way they are. But right now, they are easily the number one team in the NFC, and Sam Darnold's playing fantastic, and maybe genuinely should get votes for the MVP right now. It's just crazy. I just can't believe it. Jordan Love came back here. Brian Flores threw the kitchen sink at him, caused 3 interceptions. His late stat line is going to look super impressive. It was a pretty ugly start for them, and he contributed to digging that hole. So, Packers fall to 2-2. Vikings go to 4-0, and it was just impressive. The Vikings continue to shock and surprise. In a back and forth NFC South battle, the Falcons ended up kicking a game-winning 58-yard field goal to beat the Saints. This one went back and forth all day. The Taysom Hill show. Taysom Hill was their goal line back, scored 2 rushing touchdowns early in the game, to the dismay of every Alvin Kamara fantasy owner. But Young Hoku ended up being able to have a ridiculous game. I think ended up with 4 field goals, 2 50-yarders, just a, gutty game by the Falcons to tie up that division at 2-2 and get themselves back in that position. In another one with a paper tiger team, the Eagles got just lambasted by the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers kicked their butt up and down the field. This was not a competitive game. The Buccaneers were up 24-0 before the Eagles finally scored for the first time, and then the Eagles kept pouring it on, ended up being able to stretch it out even further and completely controlled this game. Bucky Irving looks like he is taking more and more of that backfield, but I will say Rachaad White looked a little bit better in this game. Both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans look good in this game, and Baker Mayfield is playing fantastic. Good for him. I'm happy for Baker. A lot of fans here in Cleveland wish he was still there and still leading that team. The Bengals held on against the Panthers. The Panthers were in this game. It was 7-7. It was 14-14. Some bad tackling. They let Jamar Chase break a long one that was easily preventable. Had some ugly turnovers and dug themselves a hole, but then got back. They actually had the ball within 7 in the fourth quarter, driving back and being able to kind of make themselves give themselves a chance here where they could have gone back into that game and made it a little bit more competitive of what's there. But Andy Dalton clearly has made this team at least a reasonable NFL team and that they can play on the same field. And the Bengals finally getting their first win where they barely hung on against the Panthers. We'll see where that one goes. But obviously the Bengals now at 1-3, getting some hope back into this season, but it's still a very, very flawed team when they're giving up the points they have the last 2 weeks to the Commanders and the Panthers. This is an ugly, ugly defense. Nothing like we've seen historically from Lou Anarumo. In a game that really was very, very near to being an upset, the Jaguars had their chances in this game. They were up 20-17 and had multiple possessions with the ball and simply could not punch it in. There was one that they ended up going for it late in a game where obviously the field goal would not have mattered, so I don't think anyone should be going at Peterson for that. There's lots of reasons to go after Doug Peterson, but not for kicking the field goal. But this one, they got down there. They had first and goal at the 4, and tried to pound it in. Could not get it there. Went for it on 4th down. Tried to do it with a quarterback sneak and just could not get across the line, or a quarterback draw, actually. If Lawrence had have cut outside, I actually think he could have scored, but he tried to go right up the middle and got stuffed, and that obviously would have put them up. If they scored, it would have put them up 27-17. I think it would have been really tough for Houston to come back. Houston looked pretty rough in this game. I don't think they looked super impressive, but they got the win. They pulled out the win, so it's going to be interesting to see. Next week, Buffalo heads down to Houston to play them, so this will be another one that I'll watch another time or two to get ready for this week. But certainly a flawed team and looked not as impressive as they had earlier in the year. Another one that was an upset this week. A lot of people, Pittsburgh had kept gutting out tough wins in ugly games, and this is the first time that their defense led up more than average number of points in a game. So the Colts pull off the 27-24 win. They're able to, kind of right their ship. They could have gone down 1-3. Now they're back 2-2. They lost Anthony Richardson in this game. There's he was running and kind of spun around, and Minka Fitzpatrick hit him like right where your liver is, like right above the hip. They called it a hip injury. I'm really curious to see what they do. He tried to come back in. He got hit again and then had to go off. Joe Flacco ended up playing the rest of the game. He didn't look amazing, but he functioned the offense. He was able to move the ball up and down the field. Jonathan Taylor looked really good when you consider it's against this ridiculous Pittsburgh defense. He looked really, really impressive and is someone that, is still kind of the engine of that offense. So we'll see what's up with Anthony Richardson and when he's back, but Pittsburgh gets their first loss. Justin Fields, he has flashes and moments where he looks really, really rough and can't throw the ball. And then he has some really nice passes. Like he was able to, this is maybe his best passing game of the season. So there's still moments where it doesn't look great, but there's also quite a bit where, he's now coming into his own. I'm not sure if Russell Wilson's going to get this job back. It was, 404 yards of offense, and he did contribute to some of the turnovers with the fumbles, but I think Justin Fields might hold on to this job. But Pittsburgh falls to 3-1, and Indy goes up to 2-2. A game that was not pretty. I watched parts of this back and forth. I had it up on the screen for a while. The Bears win 24-18 against the Rams. The Rams just don't have the offensive personnel right now. There's so many guys missing on the offensive line and receivers and everything there. It's just a shell of the team that it was planning to be early in the season. But they still hung tough. They're still a well-coached team with a good quarterback and a good head coach, and kept themselves in this game for a while. Chicago just slowly pulled away. Caleb Williams looked better in this game. They used DeAndre Swift, the best that they have all season, and Chicago got a win here in an ugly game. In a game that I accurately predicted there would be a lot of points scored, I didn't think they'd all be by Washington. Washington destroyed Arizona. The Washington Commanders have the best offense in the NFL. They punted for the first time in weeks today. Jaden Daniels has shattered the NFL record for completion percentage in the first 4 games of a season, not just for rookies. This is for any player. He's completed 82% of his passes. He's super efficient. He's moving the ball around well. He looks amazing right now. So happy for Washington fans and for a fan base that's really had not much to celebrate or feel good about. This was a really fun team to watch and root for, and their defense looked halfway decent today. They had really been giving up a ton of points, and Arizona had been a really dangerous team, and their defense looked pretty good. Kyler Murray came out, drove right down the field, touchdown to Marvin Harrison Jr. on their first possession, and it was like, okay, this is going to be the back and forth awesome game that we all planned on, and then they just couldn't get anything going pretty much the rest of the game, and Washington just kept pouring it on to the tune of obviously 42 points to be able to just open up an awesome lead in the NFC East. And honestly, the Cowboys and the Eagles look pretty flawed. I don't think it's crazy that Washington could win this division. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. In a game that was never a game, San Francisco dominated New England all day, opened up with, scoring drives for San Francisco and then a pick six by Fred Warner that he took a Jacoby Brissett pass back. New England did continue to play tough. They did try to put together. Joey Sly ended the half with a 63-yard field goal, but they had a scoring drive in the second half. They continue to play tough the whole time. They are going to ruin a couple team seasons. They're going to win some games late that end up messing up seeding for someone else, but this is just not a talented enough team to hang in most of these games. You'll see 216 total yards. San Francisco literally doubled their yardage, and without the San Francisco's turnovers, this probably would have been even uglier. This one, they were able to ease Debo and Kittle back into the game without going crazy. Big Jordan Mason game, but the defense won this game. They just dominated New England from the first snap. In a game that neither team deserved to win, Cleveland and Las Vegas played an ugly, terrible game. A late 90-yard touchdown from Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper got called back by one of the worst holding calls I can remember that probably should have been the game-winning score for Cleveland, but it didn't, and they called it back, and Las Vegas held on to win a game that they played pretty poorly too. I don't think that Gardner Minshew is the answer for them. I think they should probably turn it over to Aiden O'Connell. We know that Deshaun Watson is not the answer for Cleveland, but they're paying him so much money that it doesn't matter. So this is a team that has talent, but right now they're missing so many offensive linemen and David Njoku and Nick Chubb and just so much of what the heart of that team is supposed to be that right now they can't overcome their deficiencies at quarterback. So the Browns fall to 1-3. The Raiders are 2-2 and feeling good about life. And we'll see where that goes. But I don't think either of these teams are going to be doing much of anything the rest of the season. The last one that we'll go through here today is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers had every opportunity to win this game. They went up 10-0. They had the game script in their control. This is exactly what a Harbaugh, Greg Roman team wants. You want to lead. Their defense was playing good. They were limiting the Chiefs. They got turnovers. They got 2 turnovers to none. You win the turnover battle. You have the early lead. You have the game script. And they just could not execute down the stretch to do anything of where they needed to be able to pull this game out. And like we've seen all 4 weeks this year, the Chiefs have not looked great. But if you give Patrick Mahomes a chance at the end of the game, he's going to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and he did it again here and was able to execute when it mattered, went down, got the score that they needed, and came back and won this game. It looks like Rashee Rice may have had a pretty nasty injury. We're waiting for confirmation there. That's going to be a big loss for them, but Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes continue to patch this together and make it work. The Chargers had multiple opportunities down the stretch and missed field goals, turnover on downs, 3 and outs. They just could not execute and get anything going. They had multiple opportunities to put this game not out of reach, but certainly further into their lead and to be able to get themselves home with a victory here. And that turnover on downs, I think, was a great example that they had opportunities to be able to get it done. Hayden Hurst couldn't make the catch, and they had a hold anyways, which is a perfect example of what this team was. So, although obviously this was not a great weekend for our Buffalo Bills, there was a lot of up and down stuff along the rest of the league as well. So it's always good to remember, the way that some of these come out and the way that these weeks go. The Bills now are in position where they are still first in the division, still second best record in the conference, and have all full control of everything out in front of them. So an ugly, embarrassing, humbling loss last night, but still full control of everything in front of them. And 2 huge games coming up at Houston, at New York, games they got to be able to rebound and get it taken care of. So appreciate you coming out here, checking out all the things that we have going on here at Cover One. Make sure you check out all the work of the other guys on the team. Fantastic things being done. Waiting for Anthony and Eric's film breakdown of what's going on. And this week we'll have Brett Coleman on with Aaron and I to help preview Bills Texans. So make sure you check out everything else that we have going on here. But on behalf of the team at Cover One, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Greg Tompsett Football Show, and we are